Hello everyone, welcome to Tactica Imperialis and to today's video. Today is going to be another Age of Sigmar, my thoughts on. And today I wanted to talk about a topic and a mechanic that is possibly the most controversial in all of Age of Sigmar. Possibly. I mean, people will agree to disagree with me on that. But the mechanic I wish to talk about today is the double turn mechanic. It doesn't have an official name, it's just the initiative priority system that has been affectionately nicknamed double turn because it's very important. Double turn, it needs a name because it's so important. So what double turn is, for those of you who don't play AOS or who are a little bit rusty, is a priority roll-off at the end of every battle round. So after a battle round, at the end of the second player's turn or the last player's turn, if you're playing a multiplayer game, everybody rolls off, and the winner gets to choose when to go in the next round. In Triumph and Treachery, it is a little bit more messy, but in regular games, you can choose to go first or second in that battle round. So you can choose to have priority in that round. And that mechanic leads to, well, what we call double turns, where player A takes a turn, player B takes a turn, player B wins the roll-off and takes another turn before player A can take their second turn. This mechanic, and I tell no word of a lie, is exceptionally controversial and to some minds borderline broken. It may be the single most hated mechanic in the eyes of many people. In the eyes of my gaming group, it is absolutely a hated mechanic for some people because it can utterly screw you. And that's really hard to swallow, that you can just be screwed and not have a choice in the matter. This problem is most prevalent on round 1 going into round 2 for the simple reason of the way deployment and first turn works. On turn 1, the player who goes first, and actually check the core book to make sure I got this right, is the player who finishes deploying first. They get complete control. They choose who goes first and who goes second in the first battle round. There is no roll-off, there is no seize the initiative, so on a 6, go first instead, or you get to choose instead, as probably be more accurate. You're stuck. This means that a player with a small army, or who has battalions, because battalions allow you to drop your army in one go, can force their opponents to go first in an army that maybe doesn't have a lot of long range or a lot of setup and is more about just synergy and melee once it gets close, and immediately double turn them. And that is brutally powerful for certain builds. So picture the scene. You are a relatively slow, relatively static shooting army or combat army. Let's say you're Dispossessed, or you're Nurgle, or you're Tzeentch, as in Tzeentch without lots of discs. You're that sort of army that doesn't move a lot and shoots a lot or whatever else. It's not going to be able to occupy the board quickly. And you're facing off against an army like Slaanesh, like Khorne with cavalry, like Stormcast Vanguard, like Caradron Overlords potentially, and you are forced to go first on turn 1 and then get double turned. If your opponent knows what they're doing, they will likely have covered half the board by that point. And if not fully covered half the board, they might even be in melee with you, depending on their build. So you could end up having a shooting army that's out of range on turn 1, pretty much, and then gets rushed down on turn 2 before it even gets a chance to shoot. Is that fair? No. If you're an army that relies on walking up to objectives and holding them at all costs, but you're not very good at hacking your way through units, you get rushed down, you're locked in your own deployment zone, you're screwed. What do? Nothing. You just kind of lose at that point. Or at least that can happen. And that's happened to me a lot. This was particularly prevalent in the battle tome versus not battle tome era, where armies with battle tomes would utterly curb stomp armies without battle tomes. This was before the General's Handbook even came out, I should point out. Or at least before allegiance abilities from the General's Handbook came out, I should say. So it was very bad. And just because you didn't get double turned on turn 1, didn't mean you couldn't get double turned on turn 2, because you roll off every single battle round. So that threat of being rushed in before you were set up was ever present. If you had an army that needed 2 turns to set up to do something, and you were set up on 2, you're ready to go, you get double turned, you're stuffed. That happens, and it's really, really horrible. And I'll be honest, if I get a double turn on turn 2, particularly now that I play my Stormcast Vanguard so often, I do kind of feel bad because of what I've just done to my opponent. I've basically screwed them completely because I've teleported, charged, and then done another combat phase before they can shoot or magic me away. Meaning I could just teleport away again if I'm playing Vanguard, or get another round to fight the combat phase, get another round of teleportation in, doing any other nonsense. It's very, very powerful. And outside of a tournament scene, if you're playing a casual game, maybe with a new player, you do kind of feel bad. So, I get it. Double turn is unfun and unfair. But I have a defense for it. And if I'm honest, and I really do try and look at double turn objectively, I think the game would be awfully dull without it. Hear me out. So, let's say you are in a game and you are ahead. You get a good start, you take the lead, and you are relatively comfortable. It's now turn 2 or turn 3, and you're looking good. You just need to keep pushing on the pressure, and you will win the game. There's not much your opponent can do about it because you've got the priority. In games like 40k, there's not much you can do to swing that. That's no criticism of 40k. Double turn in 40k would break the game entirely. But there is a chance in 40k where you just say, I literally can't do anything because I don't have enough units, I don't have enough guns, I don't have enough speed, I don't have something, therefore I can't win in this situation. Double turn introduces an element of tension, an element of uncertainty, and for players who are behind, an element of hope. So if you're that player who's ahead, you have to think, okay, there is a chance that I'm going to get double turned. How am I going to handle that? How am I going to make sure that if a double turn comes up, I'm ready for it? So I need to keep the pressure on and make sure that I do as much damage as I can. I don't play fast and loose with anything because I need to keep the pressure on in case I get double turned, and all of a sudden I'm going to find myself heading toward the back foot. It might not change the outcome of the game, but it will make it a damn sight more tense than if double turn didn't exist. And that means that the games stay interesting for longer, because after turn 3, unlike in some games where it's just, oh, this is over, double turn means actually it's not over, or it might not be over because there's a chance of a comeback. And if you're the player who's behind, do I even need to explain this? If you're behind and you get a double turn, you've got your comeback mechanism. If you are a solid tactician who is just slightly had bad dice or is getting ever so slightly outplayed, double turn gives you a chance to put your strategies in place and make a comeback. If you are someone who is maybe playing against a better army in the control of a worse general and they're just beating you by just doing what that army does, you get a chance to put your tactics to work and actually do some real damage and show off your strategy. And if the game has just had a horrible start to you, well, you're still not out of it. You can make a comeback. And it makes, as I said, games keep interesting. Because there's nothing worse than, oh, this is just happening now. It's boring now. Whether I'm winning or I'm losing, it's just kind of dull. I had a game where I went 5 battle rounds with no change of priority. And it was dull. Well, not dull, but a damn sight less interesting than a normal game where there's at least one double turn happens. So, whilst I accept that double turn has a real problem in terms of it's very, very dangerous, at the same time, that element of danger and tension helps keep the game interesting and fresh. It means that no two games are quite alike. It isn't a case of my army just does this, then does this, then does this, and it wins. Now it does this, then it gets interrupted, so it has to wait, meaning your opponent has a chance to come back and take you out. It's just more interesting that way. And more recently, they've introduced a bit more certainty to double turn. A small amount, only a really, really small amount. But double turn now does not happen on a tied roll. It's not roll again, it's the player keeps priority. That means that you are less likely, by a small number of outcomes, to get double turn. It's a small thing, but it's a thing, keep it in mind. And also they've added endless spells. Now, I made a video a few weeks ago where I kind of debunked endless spells as a good thing. But if you're playing a game that uses endless spells, whether you're playing a malign sorcery mission, or you're just experimenting with predatory endless spells, or you just want to throw around a purple sun for the sheer lols of it, well, now you can. And endless spells are controlled, the predatory ones at least, by the player that goes second. How it works officially is the first endless spell selection for control is the second player, then the first player, then the second player, then the first player. That means that it is harder to control endless spells if you take a double turn. So let's say you summon a purple sun on your turn 1 and it's a bit in front of you, but it's kind of a bit closer to your lines than your opponent's. If you take double turn, your opponent gets control of that purple sun and can shove it back in your face, killing your stuff and also meaning that it's never going to get close enough to their lines to affect them. So do you actually want that double turn, or do you want to put the purple sun in a position where it's going to threaten them? Or do you want to set that pendulum off a bit further? Or do you want to push the Geminids in a certain direction? Or whatever else it is. It is actually very, very difficult to work around endless spells. And the other thing, the last thing, which adds it into that game stay interesting for longer, is the last turn and objectives. If you have double turn, you score a lot of points on objectives. But in the last turn of the game, where it might be, well, whatever, going last, historically, has been the more powerful choice. That was the trade-off that 40k would usually have, and fantasy would usually have, in objective-based games. If you went first, you had the impetus and the chance to press the advantage, but you didn't go last. Your opponent had the last say in how a game was ended, meaning they could choose which objectives to clear at the end and what to do to finish the game. In games where it's victory points that scored cumulatively, this isn't as powerful, but in smash and grab objective games, it's very, very powerful. For example, a knife to the heart can end on round 3 if both objectives are controlled. Therefore, you might want to go last on round 3, so that if your opponent plays a gambit and steals both objectives, well, it's not the end of turn, it's end of round. You have a chance to respond. Or on the other hand, you are going to make that gambit and you're going last, your opponent has no response to that, therefore you win. There is a reason to go last as well as there is to go first, and maybe give up double turn in order to have control over the mission. That is what double turn is good for. It means that games are far less predictable and far more interesting in terms of tactical thinking around objectives, around endless spells, and around implementation of various strategies. So I will say, in summary, double turn on turn 2 can go die in a fire. That mechanic is horrible. Double turn on 2 is so powerful that it can win games on its own. I've done it. I've been able to assassinate very powerful heroes thanks to having a double turn. I've been able to swarm massive piles of the board because I've had double turn. But I've also been rushed down and not had anything I could do about it because I got hit by a double turn. So control over turn 1 should go. It needs to go. Turn 2 double turn needs to go. But on turn 3 and onwards, I think there is an argument that not only double turn could work, I think it needs to exist because it keeps the game fresh in the late game, it allows for clutch comebacks, it allows for objective-focused gameplay, and it just makes things more interesting. So that's what I'm going to say about double turn. I know it's not a popular topic with a lot of people, and really, it's not a popular topic with me. I'm not a huge fan of it, though that's probably just because of turn 2. I think in the late game, double turn is a necessary and valued part of Age of Sigmar. It would not work in Warhammer 40,000 because 2 turns of shooting in that game is obscene and it would just break the game entirely. But in AOS, I think it's valued, I think it's worthwhile, and I think without it, the game would be far, far less interesting. But that's just my opinion. I'd be very interested to see what you have to say. Let me know in the comments below. Are you a fan of double turn? Are you an enemy of double turn? Is there a way they could tweak double turn to make it fairer? Let's say not allow you to do it on turn 1 into 2. Would that be enough to balance it for you? Is there something they could do to reward you going second more beyond endless spells and potential objective control? Keep it in mind and let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you have any suggestions for future My Thoughts on videos for AOS, 40k, or the lore in general, do let me know. I'd be very interested to see what you have to say. So thank you very much for watching. This has been Tactica Imperialis, and this has been my thoughts on Age of Sigmar's double turn mechanic. I'll see you all again. Bye for now.